Right now, somewhere in America, someone is staring at a number on a screen that feels heavier than gravity. They refresh the bank app again, hoping the digits will magically rearrange into relief, but the truth stays stubborn and cold. This is where the story really begins. Not with success, not with applause, but with the quiet hum of panic that fills a room when dreams collide with reality. You might think reinvention starts with motivation, with perfect timing, or with some cinematic breakthrough moment. But the uncomfortable truth is that reinvention usually begins when life corners you and politely stops asking for permission. Debt piles up like unopened mail, relationships collapse like houses built on silence, and failures stack so high they block the sunlight you once called hope. In moments like these, the world feels smaller, louder, and strangely more honest. The truth begins whispering things you tried to ignore when everything was comfortable. It tells you the job was never secure, the love was never guaranteed, and the plan was never permanent. And in that unsettling clarity, a strange opportunity quietly arrives. That opportunity does not knock loudly or introduce itself with confidence. It slips in through the cracks created by disappointment and sits patiently in the background. This is the moment many people mistake for the end. But what if the end is only the first honest chapter you have ever written? The teachings of Dr. Grandpa Henry often circle this quiet turning point where pain stops being punishment and starts becoming instruction. He reminds us that rock bottom is not a trapdoor, but a foundation, a place where illusions lose their grip and truth finally gets a microphone. When the noise fades, you hear questions that once felt too loud to face. Who am I without the paycheck, without the relationship, without the identity I borrowed from other people's expectations? Those questions feel terrifying because they demand honesty, and honesty can feel like standing in cold rain without shelter. Yet hidden inside that discomfort is the first spark of reinvention. You start noticing the habits that drained you, the patterns that repeated themselves, and the compromises that slowly reshaped your life. You see how chasing approval replaced chasing purpose, how comfort replaced courage, and how distraction replaced direction. This awareness feels heavy at first, like carrying a mirror you never asked for. But mirrors do not exist to hurt you. They exist to show you where change can begin. And slowly, almost invisibly, the narrative shifts. The crisis that once felt like a collapse begins to feel like a crossroads. You are still scared, still uncertain, still standing in the same messy reality, but something inside you has started moving. And that quiet movement is the beginning of everything you will become. You may not see the path yet, but the ground beneath you is shifting, preparing space for a version of you that refuses to remain defined by yesterday's limits, starting right here today. The strange thing about crisis is that it never announces the lesson it carries. It simply hands you discomfort and waits to see what you will do with it. At first, the weight feels unbearable, like you are dragging every mistake behind you wherever you go. Bills arrive like reminders of decisions you wish you could rewrite, memories of a breakup echo during quiet nights, and failures replay themselves like stubborn background noise. Yet something subtle begins to change once the shock fades. You start realizing that the pain is not random. It is specific, targeted, and strangely precise. Debt teaches the language of discipline. Breakups teach the language of self-worth, and failure teaches the language of resilience. None of these lessons feel kind while they are happening, but they are incredibly clear once you stop running from them. The turning point appears quietly, disguised as a question that refuses to leave your mind. What if this collapse is not proof that life is against you, but proof that life is redirecting you? That question creates a pause, and inside that pause lives possibility. For the first time, you begin to examine the choices that built your current reality. You notice how easy it was to say yes when you should have said no, how often you ignored the quiet voice that warned you about the wrong path, and how frequently you traded long-term peace for short-term comfort. This awareness is not gentle. It feels like standing under bright lights after living in the dark. Yet it also brings a surprising sense of control. When you can see the pattern, you can begin to change it. Slowly, your focus shifts from what happened to what can happen next. You start learning new skills, not because you feel inspired, but because you feel responsible. You begin budgeting, not because it is exciting, but because freedom suddenly matters more than impulse. You start protecting your time, your energy, and your attention like they are valuable resources, because now you understand that they always were. This stage of reinvention feels quiet and invisible to the outside world. There is no applause for the nights you spend planning, no spotlight for the habits you are rebuilding, and no audience for the discipline you are developing. But this is where the real transformation happens. Beneath the surface, a new identity is forming. You are no longer the person who waits for stability. You are becoming the person who creates it. You are no longer searching for validation. You are building self-respect. And just as momentum begins to grow, a whisper of doubt appears. It asks whether change is temporary, whether progress will fade, and whether you will fall back into old patterns. That whisper introduces suspense into the journey because the outcome is not guaranteed. Reinvention is not a straight road. It is a test of consistency, patience, and belief. And the next step will decide whether this new path becomes your future or just another unfinished attempt. The final stage of reinvention does not arrive with fireworks or dramatic announcements. It arrives quietly, like the first morning you wake up and notice that the heaviness has been replaced by clarity. The numbers on the screen still exist, the memories still live somewhere in the background, and the past has not magically disappeared, but your relationship with it has changed completely. What once felt like proof of failure now feels like evidence of survival. You begin to understand that transformation was never about erasing the past. It was about using it as raw material for a stronger future. The discipline you built in silence begins to show results in ways that feel almost unreal. Opportunities appear where obstacles once stood. Confidence replaces hesitation, and decisions start feeling intentional instead of reactive. The person who once feared uncertainty now recognizes it as space filled with possibility. This shift is not loud, but it is powerful. You realize that the storms you blamed for destroying your life were also clearing the path ahead of you. Every late night of worry taught you patience. Every painful goodbye taught you boundaries. And every failure taught you resilience. The lessons that once felt harsh now feel priceless because they shaped a version of you that could never have existed without the struggle. There is a moment when you look back and see the full story from a distance. You see how the worst days forced the most important decisions, how discomfort demanded growth, and how rock bottom quietly became the strongest foundation you have ever stood on. This realization brings a calm kind of pride, not the loud pride that seeks applause, but the quiet pride that comes from knowing you kept moving forward when stopping would have been easier. The journey of reinvention never truly ends, because growth continues as long as you keep learning, adapting, and choosing progress over comfort. Yet this chapter closes with a powerful understanding that crises are not life sentences, they are invitations. They invite you to rewrite your habits, redesign your priorities, and rediscover your strength. Somewhere, someone is standing at the beginning of their own rock bottom right now, believing the story is over. But you know the truth. The story is only beginning, and the next chapter belongs to the version of you that refused to give up. If you are benefiting from our topics, please subscribe, like, and turn on the bell notification so you can see our new videos early.